Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into an ideological firestorm that absolutely erupted on Pakistani television. It's a confrontation that gets to the very heart of a huge debate about faith, power, and responsibility in our modern world. All right, let's get into it. And it all just exploded with this one, single, blistering statement. And look, these weren't just insults. These were the opening shots in a raw, totally unfiltered battle of ideas, and it was all broadcast live for everyone to see.
But you have to ask, behind all that shouting, what was really going on? Because this was so much more than just a personal argument. This was a clash over the very soul and the role of Islam today. Is faith something private, a matter of scholarship and guidance, or is it a political force that absolutely must challenge injustice?
So, to really understand this explosion, first we've got to meet the two men right at the center of it all. So, on one side, you've got Sahil Adeem. He's a really popular motivational speaker, known for kind of taking on the religious establishment. And on the other side, there's Mufti Sakawat, a classically trained religious scholar defending the traditional role of the clergy. You've got two men representing two profoundly different ways of seeing the world. Adeem doesn't waste any time. His argument kicks off with this powerful, sweeping accusation, and it's not just aimed at the mufti sitting across from him, but at the entire clerical establishment in Pakistan.
Okay, so here's Adeem's core charge. He's saying that for years, religious leaders have deliberately built this wall between faith and political power. He argues they've basically taught people that getting involved in politics is somehow un-Islamic. And what that's done is leave the faith totally powerless when it comes to fighting real-world injustice.
And what's really fascinating here is how Adeem grounds his argument in history. He doesn't just make some vague claim. No, he points to these revered historical figures, people like Imam Hussein, who stood up to a corrupt ruler, and Imam Abu Hanifa, who famously refused to serve the state and was actually martyred for it. He holds them up as the gold standard of what true faith looks like.
And then he does something really clever. He introduces this critical distinction. He contrasts Hanafi, which is the path of resistance, named after Imam Abu Hanifa, with Yusufi. That's a term he basically coins for the path of compromise, and he names it after Abu Hanifa's own student, Abu Yusuf, who did take a job with the state. And here it is, the knockout punch. Adeem claims that while almost all the clerics in Pakistan call themselves Hanafi, in practice, he says, they're all Yusufi. He's flat out accusing them of choosing the easy path of compromise and self-preservation, over the much harder, much more dangerous path of principled resistance. All right, so that's a massive accusation. How do you even begin to defend an entire institution against something like that? Let's turn to Mufti Sakawat's response. The Mufti immediately pushes back. He argues that Adeem is being totally unfair. He uses this metaphor of a fly to suggest that Adeem is just ignoring all the good, all the scholars, the schools, the institutions, just so he can land on one perceived weak spot. Then he clarifies what he sees as the proper role of a scholar. And spoiler, it's not to be a political agitator. It's not about leading revolutions. The job, he says, is to interpret scripture, provide spiritual guidance, and operate within a very clearly defined traditional role. To overstep that, well, that just invites chaos. And this right here perfectly illustrates his core defense of tradition. For Mufti Sakawat, the fact that this school of thought has survived for over 1,000 years isn't just a historical footnote. It's the ultimate proof of its legitimacy. It's a sacred heritage that you preserve, not a political program that you weaponize.
The debate then pivots hard. It moves from historical philosophy to a raw, incredibly current issue. And this is where Sahil Adeem uses the crisis in Palestine as the ultimate real-world test of his entire argument.
And this is a deeply, deeply emotional question. Adeem points to the unfolding tragedy in Palestine and just asks, where were the mosques? He frames their silence not as some jurisdictional issue, but as a profound moral and spiritual failure. When he gets accused of being too harsh, Adeem fires back with this just devastating line. He's basically saying that polite theological debate is a luxury we can't afford when we're faced with this kind of brutal injustice. His aggressive tone, he argues, is a necessary response when innocent people are being killed. But the Mufti's perspective brings it right back to his core principle, defined roles. He argues that things like foreign policy and military action, well, that's the government's job.
A cleric's role isn't to take over the state or dictate its foreign policy, but to guide the community in matters of faith. So, after all the shouting, after all the high-stakes arguments, what can we take away from this? What does this explosive exchange really tell us? When you really break it all down, this clash represents a fundamental, still unresolved tension. On one side, you have the view that faith is a call to action, one that demands political engagement, that demands you risk something. And on the other, you have the view that faith is this sacred tradition that has to be preserved through scholarship within very clear boundaries. And here's why this matters so much. This isn't just some niche debate from one TV show. This same fundamental argument about what faith is supposed to do in the world is happening everywhere, in different forms, across so many religions and nations all over the globe. It's a truly universal conversation. Ultimately, this whole televised clash, it doesn't give us an easy answer. Not at all. Instead, it leaves us with this profound and really difficult question about the nature of faith in our turbulent world. In the face of injustice, what is the true measure of faith? Upholding timeless tradition or demanding immediate action?